Did you know that Power Apps Code Apps currently has a limitation with SharePoint document libraries and text environment variables? Well, in today's episode, we are going to show you how to overcome both of those. So, Charles, do you want to take it away?
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, so one of the things that you'll probably end up wanting to do at some point if you're working with code apps a lot is saving files. And when you're saving files, you might not want to save them to Dataverse because it can be quite expensive. You might want to just put them in a SharePoint document library. It's much cheaper. And that's what SharePoint was built for as well. So what we're going to show today is how you can actually do that because we've come up with a method for it. And in front of you now, you can see the app that we've created just to demonstrate the functionality. I'll explain the app first. Essentially, it's for an estate agency. So what's that called in American terms? A realtor or something like that?
Realtor, yeah. Real estate.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments if there's any Americans watching.
So we have some properties that we can access. And then for those properties, we can upload photos for them. And what we want to do is we want to choose the best photos and have a featured photo as well. And this app is all running using Dataverse and a SharePoint document library. So let's have a demo of it first, shall we? So if I click on upload photos and then I can drag photos here, or I can just click on it and choose some photos. ChatGPT kindly gave me some sample photos to use. And then what's happening now is we've already have the Dataverse record for this property, and we are now saving Dataverse records for this property for the photos, and we're also uploading those photos to SharePoint. So let's go and have a look at what we've done. So in our SharePoint document library here, if I refresh it, you can see that we've got the photos that we've just added. And if I go to our solution, you can see that we've got Dataverse tables already existing. So one for the listing, which is essentially your property, like that. And then if we go to listing photo, this will have a lookup to those properties. And this will be those photos that we've just uploaded. So you can see that the photo name is the ChatGPT file name that ChatGPT gave it. And then we've got our SharePoint file URLs as well, which is basically telling it where it's located on SharePoint. Well, something else that's really common for this kind of scenario is wanting to be able to sort things. And in SharePoint, if we were in there and we were trying to do this via SharePoint, we don't have a way of sorting these. But because we're building a custom interface and because we've got Dataverse, what we can do is we can say, well, let's star some of these so that we can bring them into view. And then let's say that we wanted this second one to actually be our featured photo. We can just drag it along and then it's our featured photo. And if we go back into Dataverse and we refresh this, so I'll just click off the table and then back into the table. So what you can see now is if we go into the listing photo table that it's recorded the sort order. What I'm going to do is just put that back to first. Actually, I forgot one, didn't I? I should add that one. Maybe that's going to be our featured. Oh, maybe that's not going to be our featured photo. Maybe we shouldn't have that one. We've got a cat photo bombing and we've got a bit of an issue there.
Ideal.
We'll leave that one out for now. We'll publish the changes for those. So yeah, as you can see, we've got the photos being uploaded and we're able to mess around with the sort order. We can set things as favorites. This is all amazing. But how did we get around the fact that this is not built into code apps by default?
So there's a lot to unpick here. Do you want to kind of run us through what's going on behind the scenes so it makes sense? Because on the surface of it, it's really simple, right?
Yeah, and actually under the hood is not too dissimilar. It is actually relatively simple. We've made it simple for you. So we're providing this repository for you to be able to access. This is public, and we'll put a link in the description of the video. And if you go to this repository, it gives you instructions on how to get started with this SharePoint file, essentially, or files that we're giving to you. Essentially, what we're doing is bridging that gap that Microsoft have left between not having a way to add this connector to your repository, to your code app. So this is the way that you're going to do it. So you make sure that you have your code app ready. You need to have a SharePoint connection in your environment. And then you run this piece of code, populating the connection ID, your dataset site URL. So that's your URL to your SharePoint site and the table for your document library. So just like you would with a list. And then what we're going to do is help you with that then. But the first thing that I should say is that you want to make sure that your Power Apps version is at least 1.3 or above, and it should be anyway. So then what you need to do next is run this command line code. And of course, you can just ask your agent to do this for you. And what that will do is that will install the files from this that you need. And those files are going to essentially bridge that gap so that you can use a SharePoint document library. And then the way to use it is also written here, which you don't necessarily need to know because you can ask the agent to do this. But essentially, it's just like using any other connector, just like using a Dataverse connector, for example. So you basically connect to the service. So you provide it with your data source information, and then you perform the actions. So we've given 5 different actions that you can perform. Upload a file where you provide the file, you provide the folder path, and potentially optionally the file name. And then you can replace files, you can delete files, you can get file metadata, and you can get the actual content of a file. So if you wanted to download the file, you get the content and it's downloadable. And this then goes into all of the details of how it works. But essentially, from let's say from a power squared perspective, we're using agents for all of this stuff. So it's good for us to know how it works, but we wouldn't necessarily want to code it ourselves. We would probably get this URL, provide it to an agent and say, hey, can you set this up? And then it will do something like this for you.
Yeah. And I think it's good to point out that there's quite a large gap, isn't it, from, the code up front at the minute, not being able to have something built in natively. But I feel this plugs the gap quite well up until we get something, official from Microsoft. So yeah, it's good to see, there's a lot of work behind the scenes to get this working, but it's good to know that you can interface with SharePoint document libraries and it works quite well, I'd say.
Yeah, it works beautifully. And then, so there is another side to this. We mentioned environment variables before. Now, why would we want to be using a text environment variable with this situation? Because we know that environment variables can work with data sources. Well, there's more to a SharePoint document library than just the data source. There's also the folder name that you'll have here. So property listing photos is also the folder name that we're using. And we need to record that because that could change depending on the environment we're going to. So the way that we're dealing with this and the way that Microsoft have recommended it is that if you want text environment variables, you should have some kind of config table for your app. So again, if you watched our previous video where we replaced the Dataverse MCP server with just a script, that's what we used for this in order to generate this table and to generate the record in the config. We're not working in this maker portal anymore, clicking and typing. What we're doing is we're getting our agents to do it for us. So in this, it created this table. Because it's AI creating it, it gives it a description and all of the good stuff. And then it set a setting key. So it's a key value pair. The key is the photo library folder path, and then the value is what the folder is. So if we change that folder name in the next environment, maybe on our next SharePoint site, it's a test site, it doesn't have quite the same name, or we want to just reuse this same site but have a different folder, we can do that because we can have a different environment variable here.
Yeah, that's really nice. And we're effectively using the environment variables in a table that we've built ourselves, haven't we? But I would say the implications of doing this is security isn't going to be as robust as if you're using environment variables natively, for example. So that could have potential issues. So it might not be something that, you might want to use for production. For example, it just depends on what kind of key and value pairs that you'd be storing in here. Something like this may be fine, but if it's sensitive data or something like that, you might not want to do it, right?
Yeah, essentially, you're going to have to give your users access to read values from this table. So if they can read values, they can read everything in the table. So I guess one way that you might try and get around that is you might have 2 separate app configs, maybe one which is less sensitive and one which is more sensitive. So then you might have to have a different table for each security role in order to protect that information if it is that sensitive. But yeah, it's not really the nicest way around things. In an ideal world, we would be able to just set a text environment variable as you can do with data sources, and that would just be behind the scenes and hidden from the users. So we hope that you found this really useful. And for everyone out there who's using SharePoint document libraries, Here's your solution. Until Microsoft do something, we've made it nice and easy for you. So go ahead, grab our files, use them. It's all under open source MIT license, so you can do what you want with it, essentially. We just hope that you enjoy, and we've made life easier for you. So don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and we'll see you in the next one.